you can get all the insight on Mutant TV.
Welcome back to Mutant TV, everybody. I'm your host, Streebo Magic, and this week I'm going to do my best to give you a spoiler-free review of Season 1 of True Blood. Just in case you've been living under a rock, over the past year, vampires have exploded back into the public's consciousness with the success of the Twilight book series now becoming a series of movies, and with the Sookie Stackhouse novels being adapted into the TV series True Blood on HBO. Vampires are just everywhere. Everywhere you look, it's blowing up all over the place. It's probably the biggest resurgence in vampire popularity that we've had since the early to mid-90s, back when Interview with the Vampire came out. Everyone's talking about True Blood, so I figured we may as well go ahead and review it, maybe get a few people interested in it that haven't decided whether or not they want to check it out. Everyone's talking about it, so we may as well catch up or just be left out of the conversation for right now. So Season 1 of True Blood tells the story of a world where vampires have revealed their existence to humanity. Okay, the basic premise is that Japanese scientists develop a synthetic blood called True Blood that vampires can use as sustenance. They can use to sustain their existence, and therefore they no longer need to drain blood of the living. So vampires have become an integrated part of society. For some reason, that part of the premise always just stuck in my craw, but if you're willing to accept that from the get-go, then just buckle in, sit down on the roller coaster, and get ready for the ride. True Blood tells the story of the little southern town of Bontemps, populated by all manner of bizarre and interesting characters. The main one is Sookie Stackhouse, a telepathic waitress, her eventual boyfriend, Bill Compton, who happens to be an undead vampire from the Civil War era of the South. There's also Sam Merlot, owner of the bar that Sookie works in. There's her bizarre sex fiend brother, Jason. There's her best friend, Tara. There's her sweet, adoring, kind of strange but in a charming way grandmother called Graham, Jason's best friend Renee, and of course the character that defines colorful, Lafayette the cook. And I mean colorful in a good way, because he's flamboyant, gay, over the top. He's like a mix of Prince and Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes from Tu Wong Fu, and he's also part badass and part, light ass, or whatever you want to call it. But he's a really endearing character, and that's a lot of the charm of True Blood, is the endearing nature of the characters. They really do kind of suck you into their world. You believe in their existence. You want to see what happens to them. You want them to succeed in their relationships. And of course what the series is all about is about their relationships and how they usually don't succeed, how they spend most of the time ruining them, and reacting to that. So Sookie and Bill first meet when Bill comes into Merlot's to get a drink of True Blood, and basically no one wants to serve him. Sookie, being an outsider herself all of her life because of this uncontrolled telepathy, she is actually, mystified, enthralled, if you will, by Bill, by the idea of another outsider coming into Merlot's, a guy that's an outsider in the town, but she feels a strange kinship because she feels like an outsider herself. So she's the only one that wants to serve him. She goes up to him, begins to talk to him, and their relationship starts from there. Right away, Sookie seems to fall for him because when she's around him, her telepathy quiets. Normally she doesn't have very good control over it. Over the course of the series, that's kind of her growth as a character, is learning how to control her emotions, and that's kind of manifested in how she controls her telepathy. And at the beginning of the series, she has no control over it. So when she's around him and things are quiet, that allows her to kind of realize her emotions and thoughts, and she feels in control of everything. What happens is Bill leaves with some people who actually attack him and try to drain his blood. Sookie goes out into the parking lot because she knows exactly who he's dealing with, and she goes out to help him. She winds up rescuing him, and they end up falling in love from there. Right from there, you have everything that True Blood is about, and it's really about this budding romance, this forbidden romance, really, if you will, between the living human and an undead vampire. But but Sookie and Bill are really these two individuals that have managed to touch one another's souls across the vast gulf of differences, both racially or social or emotional. They somehow, despite all the differences between the two of them, they seem to have found some kind of kinship with one another that calls them to each other. So that's kind of, that's another part of the charm of the show. Now, yes, True Blood is mostly a soap opera. You need to know that going in. So that's what's keeping, your girlfriends watching it, okay? But what the guys can sit and watch for are the horror elements. Well, aside from the sex elements, because there are a lot of great, crazy sex scenes, usually involving Sookie's brother, Jason, and whatever crazy floozy he's met at the time. They wind up having crazy, wild monkey sex, which is always just is completely engaging when that happens. But at other times, the horror fans will enjoy the little splashes of horror that might show up in the show. Like there might be a scene that will have a little bit of gore, or the scene will be set up with a real gothic atmosphere to kind of try to build tension and dread. That's when we get those kind of horror build-ups and payoffs. And as a horror fan, we enjoy those little moments in between all the other love, romance, sex, and just wild craziness. That horror usually manifests in the form of the subplot of an ongoing series of murders of what are called fangbangers, which are humans that have sex with vampires. So there's this subplot thread going throughout the series of, who is the murderer? Is it one of the people of Bontemps? Is it one of the vampires? There are a lot of different suspects and a lot of different red herrings. So that's, another thing that's kind of interesting. The mystery draws you in as well. But the name of the game in this show is the characters. Throughout season 1, aside from the main Sookie subplot, which kind of involves a love triangle between herself and Bill and also Sam, there are always the subplots with Jason as he deals with being implicated in these fangbanger murders, and he gets kind of drawn into this world of vampire drug addicts, vampire blood drug addicts, where in the world of True Blood, whenever humans ingest concentrated doses of vampire blood, it acts as kind of like a psychoactive agent, like LSD or something like that, and they trip out on this weird stuff. There's also the various subplots with Sookie's best friend, Tara, who has to deal with what's going on between her and her alcoholic mother. There's an eventual exorcism. There's all kinds of craziness there. But in all honesty, when this plot is not centered around Sookie or at least Jason, the show kind of drags down. The Tara stuff apparently is added. It's an addition that's new to the series, that's not in the Charlene Harris novels. So I think in a lot of ways it really shows, because a lot of the writing is at its weakest when it centers on Tara. There are some things that happen that are just too entirely coincidental, that are just the results of lazy writing, and it really shows through that these moments are kind of tacked on to the series because they don't integrate into the Sookie and Bill subplot. Now, a lot of people complain about the acting in the show, the bad accents, but you know what? I don't care. I believe in all the characters. I think all the actors do a great job. I think all of their characters are believable. I live in the deep South myself in North Carolina. I hear these bizarre accents every day. I have one myself. I'm not as bad as the guys over at Dead Pit, Creepy Kentuckian and Uncle Bill, but, I'm pretty bad. I'm a old Southern boy from the Delta of Southern Mississippi, so, what you see is what you get. But I love the characters in True Blood, in Bontemps. It's a very real world to me. The thing that makes it interesting is that, yes, they're quirky and they're charming, but there's also kind of this strange, surreal horror beneath it all, almost like in a David Lynch movie. I mean, I don't want to say that the series has these kind of surrealist Lynchian moments, because if it does, it's maybe one or two here or there. I don't know if that's really a conscious element. But the similarity is in that the world is kind of painted as this cheerful Norman Rockwell painting, where you'd expect to see every house have a white picket fence and 2 cars in every garage. and, you know, an apple pie on every windowsill. But the thing is, when you look around the corner, there's also a pile of bodies in the backyard. That's what Bon Tom's is it looks picturesque, but underneath there's something that's festering and rotten and evil, and that's what makes it intriguing.